At the beginning of the movie, we meet a girl named Millie who arrives at the house of the Winchester family. The Winchesters were a very wealthy family, and their house was magnificent. Millie had come there looking for a job. Millie wanted to get a job as a live-in caretaker, someone who would live in the house and do all the maid's work. You know, like a live-in maid. To appear professional, Millie wears fake glasses, and inside the house, she meets Nina Winchester, who is very sweet. Nina tells Millie that she has a young daughter named Cece, and Nina's husband is named Andrew Winchester. Nina shows Millie around the entire house, then explains her responsibilities, such as cleaning, dusting, cooking, and so on. Nina also shows Millie her room, where she will be staying. Nina also reveals that she is currently pregnant, but it's in the very early stages, and she hasn't even told her husband, Andrew, about it yet. While walking up and down the circular staircase, Nina says that her husband loves these strange stairs, but that one day she'll fall down them and die. Friends, remember this point because there's a great connection to it later. For now, Nina tells Millie that if Millie is selected for the position, Nina will call her back. Before Millie leaves, Nina even gives her $20 because Millie must have spent money getting there. In short, Nina was very sweet, and this job would be a dream job for Millie. But friends, Millie was sure she wouldn't get the job. Why? Because if Nina did a background check on Millie, she would find out that Millie is currently on parole. Yes, friends, Millie had committed some kind of crime in the past that resulted in a 15-year sentence. In fact, she served 10 years in prison, but now she's out on parole. Millie is completely alone. In fact, she doesn't even have a place to live. She sleeps in her car and freshens up in public restrooms and all that. If Millie makes even one mistake, she'll be sent back to jail for the remaining 5 years. But if Millie can get a job and build a life for herself, she might be able to escape her situation. The only problem was, given Millie's past, who would even give her a job? In fact, she had given the Winchesters a fake resume and other documents. A simple background check would reveal everything about her, and she wouldn't get the job. But Millie was happy that at least she got $20 for going there. Now friends, at this point you might be wondering what Millie did to get a 15-year sentence. Well, I'll tell you more about that later in the video. Anyway, a day or two later, Millie is sleeping in her car when a police officer comes and tells her that she can't sleep in her car in a public area like that. Millie is about to leave when she gets a call from Nina, who had somehow selected Millie for the job. Millie is very happy and immediately goes to the Winchesters' house. She didn't know the code to open the main door of the house, so she asked the groundskeeper to open it for her. The groundskeeper's name was Enzo, and he stared at Millie. Enzo was quite reserved. Afterward, Millie went inside and met Nina. Millie noticed that the house was spotless the last time she was there, but today it was quite dirty, with dishes scattered everywhere. Nina told Millie to settle into her room, which was an attic-like room upstairs. Meanwhile, Nina kept mentioning that she had to write a PTA speech. After settling in, Millie started her work, and that night, Cece and Andrew Winchester arrived at the house. Andrew was surprised to see Millie there, as he wasn't expecting a house helper. Nina explained that Millie would be staying with the family from now on. Andrew didn't seem particularly happy about this. In fact, Cece was also giving Millie strange looks. Cece even told Millie that she shouldn't climb on the furniture with her shoes on. Later, Millie went to her room, where she noticed that although there was a lock on the door, it could only be locked or unlocked from the outside using a key. Moreover, her attic-like room only had one window, and it was sealed shut, meaning it couldn't be opened. The room had a mini-fridge with exactly 3 bottles of water. A little later, Nina comes to check on Millie, and Millie says she needs the room key, and that it would be good if the room window could be opened. Nina says she will get it all fixed. Nina also gives Millie a work phone, saying that it contains the house's credit card information and other details, and Millie can use it for household chores or to contact someone, buy something for the house, and so on. Millie's own phone was very old, so she was happy to get a newer one. The next day, Millie wakes up a little late and rushes downstairs. At first, Millie thinks her room is locked from the outside, but then, with a little force, the door opens. Millie goes downstairs, where she finds Nina shouting and completely enraged. Why? Because Nina had left her PTA notes in the kitchen, and now the notes were missing. In fact, Nina was blaming Millie for the missing notes and was furious with her. This was very shocking, because until yesterday, Nina was behaving like the calmest and best person in the world. But suddenly, her behavior had changed. Andrew comes and calms Nina down and takes her away. After this, Andrew apologizes to Millie for everything. In fact, he even helps Millie. Millie understands that Nina is a little strange and Andrew is a good person. After cleaning up, Millie tries to talk to Enzo outside about all this, but Enzo doesn't say anything. In fact, we, the viewers, see Nina staring at Enzo from the house, from her room, and seeing Nina, Enzo doesn't reveal anything. While cleaning the house, Millie notices a tablet lying on the floor in Nina's bathroom. Nina was still behaving strangely. One moment she was sweet, the next she was not. The next second, she would completely lose her temper. It was unclear what was going on. That night, Millie cooks dinner, and Andrew invites Millie to eat with him and Cece. Here, Cece behaves strangely, telling Millie to change her glass because, Cece, according to her, it was dirty. But the glass actually looked clean. Cece said that juice is a privilege and should only be drunk from a clean glass. At this point, Millie understood that only Andrew was normal in this family, and somewhere along the line, Millie was starting to feel attracted to Andrew. Considering Millie had been in prison for the past 10 years and hadn't been intimate with anyone, that night she dreams of Andrew, where she was about to be intimate with him. Anyway, the next morning, Nina gives Millie the key to her room and taunts her about her cooking. Then Saturday arrives, which, Cece, according to the contract, should have been Millie's day off. But suddenly, Nina says she can't give Millie the day off. Now, Millie wanted Saturday off because she had to meet her parole officer on some Saturdays, but she couldn't tell the Winner family this. But Nina was adamant that she wouldn't let Millie go out under any circumstances. Then Andrew arrives and gives Millie the day off, saying that he will go out with Cece, and Nina can also go to the salon, so Millie can have the whole day off. After getting the day off, Millie meets her parole officer, who tells her that since Millie has found a job and a place to live, her 5-year sentence will be waived, but if she loses her job or becomes homeless, she will be sent back to jail. In short, no matter how Nina behaves, Millie cannot afford to lose that job. She has to obey Nina. After this meeting, Millie leaves when she gets a call from Nina, saying that Millie should now pick up Cece from her ballet class. Nina doesn't even tell Millie which ballet class Cece is in, so Millie has to guess and somehow manages to find Cece's class. There, Millie learns that Cece is actually supposed to be staying with another parent named Patrice, and this plan had been made a long time ago. Patrice immediately calls Nina to confirm, and Nina says that yes, the plan was for her daughter to stay with her today. Millie is not only embarrassed, but when she gets home, Nina lashes out at her, asking why she went there to pick Cece up. Millie doesn't answer, even though she knows Nina deliberately set her up. Now, Andrew's mother, Evelyn Winchester, is visiting, and she also makes judgmental comments about Millie. We also learn that Evelyn was very interested in chinaware. You know, those very nice, expensive plates with designs. Evelyn collected them and gave them to her son Andrew, who also shared this interest and collected chinaware. Anyway, Millie couldn't sleep that night, so she goes to the projector room in the house and starts watching Family Feud. Andrew also comes into the room and starts making small talk with Millie. Andrew explains that Nina is a little disturbed and doesn't mean to be mean to Millie. In fact, Andrew adds that Nina lived in a foster home as a child because her parents died in a house fire. For a long time, the police suspected that Nina might have set the fire herself, but then no proof was found. The conversation was still going on when Nina arrived and saw Andrew with Millie. Andrew took it casually because he was just talking to Millie late at night, but Nina lashed out at Millie. She directly told Millie to pack her bags and leave the next morning. Millie pleaded with Nina, and Nina gave her a week's time, saying she would keep a close eye on her. The next morning, some of Nina's friends came to the house, like Juliana, Patrice, Suzanne, etc., and they all badmouthed Nina behind her back. They were all saying that Nina used to live on the streets, and that marrying Andrew had improved her life. They also said that Nina wasn't even pregnant. She was just trying to have a child. If you remember, Nina had lied to Millie about being pregnant. They also said Nina wasn't mentally stable because she had literally spent 9 months in a mental ward, and she didn't take care of herself, her daughter, or her husband. While Andrew was so nice, so hot, and yet he was putting up with a woman like Nina. That was the general consensus among all of Nina's friends. Then Saturday arrived, and Nina again roped Millie into doing work. Millie was supposed to babysit Cece because Nina and Andrew were going out. Millie couldn't refuse this time because she didn't want to lose her job. As soon as Nina left, Millie immediately checked Nina's medication, which was clearly for acute psychosis. Seeing all this, Millie decided that she wouldn't continue this job and immediately called a friend, telling her that she would be leaving this place. Cece overheard Millie's conversation and started asking her about it. Millie made excuses to Cece and then started playing with her. Millie noticed that one of her toy puppets was with Cece, so Cece goes to her room. Suddenly, Nina and Andrew return home. Nina was behaving strangely again. That night, Andrew and Millie are able to talk. Andrew tells her that Cece is not actually his daughter, but only Nina's daughter. Andrew and Nina had gone to the doctor so they could have a child, but Nina has premature ovarian insufficiency, which means she cannot have children. Andrew wanted many children, but Nina is neither mentally stable nor capable of having a child. Hearing all this, Millie feels very sorry for Andrew. That night, Millie hears noises in the house, and when she goes downstairs, she finds Nina holding a knife. In fact, the knife had blood on it, as if she had attacked Andrew. But then Andrew comes from behind, controls Nina, and closes the room door. The next day, Nina meets Millie and apologizes for the previous night. In fact, Nina tells Millie to take the weekend off and book an expensive hotel, restaurant, and tickets for a musical play called Showdown, which Andrew likes. Nina also gifts Millie some of her expensive clothes, saying that Millie can keep them as Nina won't wear them anyway. That day, Millie goes to pick up Cece from her ballet class, where she meets another live-in maid. She tells Millie that Nina had actually tried to drown her own daughter, Cece. Andrew saved Cece just in time, and that's why Nina was admitted to a psychiatric ward for 9 months. Hearing this, Millie immediately takes Cece home and starts asking Andrew about it. Just then, Nina comes out and gets angry at Millie for booking such expensive hotel and play tickets, because Nina is not available this Saturday. Millie was like, "You were the one who told me to book the tickets." And Nina says, "I didn't say that at all." Nina even goes so far as to say that since the tickets are non-refundable, the money will be deducted from Millie's salary. Millie couldn't afford this and gets upset. But then Andrew comes and handles the situation, saying that Millie's money won't be deducted. Later that day, Andrew sees Millie coming out of the washroom, and they both apologize to each other because the situation had become a little awkward. Andrew tells Millie that since Nina is going to DC with Cece this Saturday, Andrew is alone. Millie has some tickets that are already booked, and the money has already been spent, so why don't they go out together? Millie initially refuses, but later she agrees, because she was starting to feel attracted to Andrew. So, on Saturday, Millie wears the dress given to her by Nina. Then, without telling Nina, they both go out together. Millie and Andrew attend a play, eat at a nice restaurant, dance, and in short, have a great time. Then they go to a hotel where they book separate rooms. When Millie checks her phone in her room, she finds several messages from Nina where she's talking about firing Millie. Millie immediately goes to Andrew's room and shows him the messages, and Andrew says that he won't let Millie get fired. At this point, they become intimate and spend the night together. The next morning, Andrew says that Nina shouldn't find out about their intimacy and that they need to get home before Nina returns. So they both arrive home, and a little later, Nina also arrives. Nina first apologizes to Millie for sending so many messages. Then she started behaving strangely again. Meanwhile, Millie and Andrew were avoiding eye contact because they had already become intimate with each other. Now, at lunchtime, Nina suddenly says that Millie cooks very well. Did she learn to cook in jail? Hearing this, both Millie and Andrew were shocked because Andrew didn't know that Millie had been to jail in the past. Millie was shocked because Nina already knew that Millie was on parole. Still, she hired Millie because no matter how much she mistreated Millie, Millie wouldn't be able to leave this job. After this, Nina gives Millie her car keys, saying that she should take her car and buy some groceries because Millie's car is so dirty that it ruins their status. Millie takes Nina's car to buy groceries, and there Millie meets one of Nina's friends, who sees the new phone in Millie's hand. Nina's friend says that Nina must have given her this phone, and generally in-house maids don't accept such phones from their employers. Why? Because these phones have tracking apps loaded on them, which allows the employers to keep track of every activity of the maids. Hearing this, Millie is stunned because Nina had given her this phone, right? And if Nina is tracking everything, then she must have also realized that Millie and Andrew have become intimate. Realizing this, Millie immediately finishes her shopping, and after shopping, some police officers suddenly arrive and arrest Millie. Why? Because after giving Millie her car, Nina reported to the police that Millie had stolen her car. In this situation, Millie's going to jail was certain, but then Andrew arrives and handles the situation. At this point, Millie tells Andrew that Nina might have found out about their relationship. Andrew agrees, and the two finally return home. At home, Nina was already waiting and started scolding Millie as soon as she arrived. Nina clearly states that Millie slept with her husband and that Nina will ruin Millie's life for it. Nina threatens to file a police complaint against Millie for stealing her dresses which would send Millie back to jail. In fact, Nina even slaps Millie at this point. Andrew finally intervenes and becomes very angry. So angry that he literally tells Nina to leave the house, because the house, the car, the property, everything belongs to Andrew, and he couldn't tolerate Nina anymore. Nina couldn't believe that Andrew would throw her out of the house, and she leaves in tears in her car. Now, friends, you might have a doubt that Nina could sue Andrew and take half of his property or demand alimony. Right? Wrong. Because Andrew had Nina sign a prenuptial agreement before the marriage. In fact, because of the prenup, Andrew won't give Nina a single penny. Everything belonged to Andrew, right? That's how he had the prenup signed, so that Nina wouldn't get anything. So yes, Nina is out of the picture now. After that, Andrew and Millie are alone at home. And then what? They become very intimate and start living happily together. One morning, Millie is about to take breakfast to Andrew on his favorite china plate when Enzo arrives at the door, startling her. The plate slips from Millie's hands and breaks. Andrew then comes in and is a little upset to see his favorite plate broken. But then he immediately says that he will have someone fix it. He tells Millie to just put the pieces of the plate in a plastic bag so they can be glued back together. Then Andrew gets angry at Enzo and fires him. That evening, when Andrew returns from work, he finds that Millie had put the plate pieces in a plastic bag but hadn't washed them. Andrew's expression changes slightly, but then he becomes intimate with Millie and takes her to the attic room. There, Andrew gives Millie champagne and becomes intimate with her, and the next moment, Millie is asleep. When Millie wakes up, she finds herself in the attic room, and Andrew is not there. In fact, the door to the room is locked from the outside. Yes, Andrew had locked Millie in, and he was standing outside. He had probably put something in the champagne that made Millie fall asleep. Millie asks Andrew to open the door, but Andrew says he won't open it yet. Millie screams, and the scene cuts. Meanwhile, we are shown what is happening with Nina. Nina cries after being kicked out of the house by Andrew, but then suddenly starts laughing. Then Nina starts celebrating as if she has escaped Andrew's clutches, and at this point, we learn Nina's entire backstory. When Nina was only 8 years old, her house caught fire, killing her parents. Nina had no hand in starting the fire, and since then, Nina has always grown up in foster homes. She had self-esteem and confidence issues, but Nina was good at studying, which earned her a scholarship. This allowed Nina to go to law school, where she fell in love with a professor, resulting in Nina becoming pregnant with Cece. The professor abandoned Nina and Cece, making Nina a single mother. Nina also dropped out of law school and took a job at a company to support her family. This, friends, was Andrew's company, and one day Nina goes to a large meeting hall where the company's top executives were present, and Nina's shirt gets dirty because of milk production. A man from the company makes fun of Nina, and that's when Andrew notices her. Andrew took Nina out to dinner that day as an apology, and then they started dating. Nina learns that Andrew was previously engaged to another woman, but for some reason, Andrew and that girl couldn't get married. Nina doesn't pay much attention to this. And then, within 6 days, Nina and Andrew became intimate, and within a few days, Andrew proposed to Nina. Nina was a single mother, and if she was getting a great and handsome guy like Andrew, who was super rich, what was the problem? Well, the problem starts a few days after the marriage, when one day Andrew tells Nina that black hairs are visible at the roots of her hair, so Nina should dye her hair back to blonde. Nina says okay, but she forgets to dye her hair because of work. So Andrew cleverly locks Nina in that attic room from the outside. Then Andrew says that there are rules in this house that Nina must follow. Since Nina didn't listen to Andrew and didn't color her hair, she has to pull out 100 of her hairs, one by one, in such a way that the follicles, the roots, also come out with the hair. Then Nina has to put these 100 hairs in an envelope, and only then will Andrew set Nina free. At first, Nina thinks it's a joke, but she quickly realizes that Andrew was serious. Nina somehow manages to do the process again, after which Andrew finally opens the door for her. Nina immediately runs to Cece, because she had been locked in that room for several days. Andrew gives Nina water, and as soon as she drinks it, she faints. When she regains consciousness, her daughter was drowning in the bathtub. Nina goes to save her daughter, but then the police arrive and arrest Nina. Why? Because Andrew had informed the police that he was out of the house and Nina was drowning her own daughter after taking some pills. While all of this was Andrew's setup, Nina gets trapped in this situation and is sent to a psychiatric ward. There, Nina initially tries to explain that Andrew did all this, but the doctors were not ready to believe her. Nina stays in the psychiatric ward for 9 months, and during this time, she can't even see her daughter, Cece. Giving up, Nina falsely confesses that she tried to drown her daughter and promises to improve herself. Nina is forced to take medication, and finally she is released from the psychiatric ward, after which she is able to see Cece, who had been cared for by Andrew's mother. By this point, Nina was completely trapped in Andrew's manipulative game. Andrew would punish Nina for the slightest things, like leaving a light on in the house or spilling something on the table. Any small mistake Nina made resulted in punishment. The whole world thought Andrew was the perfect, handsome husband, and that Nina was mentally unstable. Andrew wanted a child with Nina, but Nina didn't want to give him one. So, Nina got an IUD to prevent pregnancy, and even had a doctor lie, claiming that Nina didn't have any eggs. Whenever Nina protested, Andrew would frame her, forcing her back into the psychiatric ward. Nina was constantly in and out of the psychiatric ward, and all this abuse was witnessed by Enzo, the groundskeeper. Enzo wanted to help Nina. In fact, Enzo even gave Nina fake passports so she could escape with her daughter Cece, but the passports fell into Andrew's hands, and Nina was sent back to the psychiatric ward. Nina couldn't even harm herself because she didn't want to leave her daughter in the hands of a monster like Andrew. And then Nina devised a perfect plan. She deliberately decided to hire a live-in maid because she had seen Millie's online profile. Millie was looking for a job. Millie was a woman who had been sentenced to 15 years in prison for murder and was currently on parole after serving 10 years. Millie was attractive, and Nina knew Andrew would be drawn to her because Andrew liked blonde girls, and that was his weakness. Nina hired Millie after careful consideration. Then she deliberately mistreated Millie so that Andrew would intervene and help Millie to appear sweet and kind. It was Andrew's nature to trap helpless girls in his web. Then he would show them that he was a very good person. Then, when the girl was trapped in his web, Andrew would show his true colors. So, gradually, Andrew became attracted to Millie, and Nina continued to behave badly. Finally, Andrew and Millie became intimate, which Nina found out about through that phone, and Nina deliberately created a huge scene that day. In anger, Andrew kicked Nina out of the house, which was exactly what Nina wanted. In fact, Nina had planned all this while Cece was away at a camp, and Nina was planning to take Cece away from there. Andrew left or kicked Nina out because he had found a new victim, which was Millie. Now friends, Enzo also knew about Nina's plan, and Enzo was against this plan because Nina was about to ruin another girl's life. But Nina had made Enzo promise that he wouldn't say anything. That's why Enzo never said anything. Enzo felt both empathy and sympathy for Nina because Enzo had a sister like Nina whose husband had mistreated her. Now, Nina's plan didn't end there. Rather, Nina had done a lot of research on Millie. When Nina met Millie, she immediately understood that Millie wasn't the kind of girl who would passively endure abuse like she did. Rather, given the opportunity, Millie would take care of Andrew herself. In fact, Millie had done something like this before, which is why she went to jail for 15 years for murder. Now the question is, what will Millie do next? So, coming to the present, Millie is locked in the attic of Winchester House, and Andrew is outside saying that Millie has no manners. Millie broke a china plate. In fact, she didn't even clean up the pieces when she put them in a plastic bag. That's why Andrew is punishing Millie. Millie will stay in this room without food or water until she makes 21 deep, long cuts on her stomach with a sharp piece of that same china plate. Andrew throws a sharp piece of the china plate under the door and then leaves. At first, Millie thinks it's a joke, but she quickly realizes that Andrew is serious. Andrew even says that if Millie doesn't make the 21 cuts properly, she'll have to restart the process. Millie tries many ways to escape, then waits for a long time, but Andrew doesn't open the door. Millie cries, and here we are told about Millie's past. In her school days, Millie liked a handsome boy similar to Andrew, but one day, Millie finds out that this boy was doing something wrong to another girl. In this situation, Millie attacks the boy so severely that he dies, which is why Millie gets caught in this case and is sentenced to 15 years in prison. Millie spent 10 years in jail and then was released on parole. While on parole, Millie actually got a job in the flood-affected area, okay? But Millie attacked an old man there because he was harassing a girl from the flood-affected area. This matter was settled within the community. It didn't go to the police, which is why Millie got away with it, but she lost that job too. Then Millie finally got a job at the Winchester's place. So at this point, Millie does exactly what Andrew told her to do. Yes, it hurts Millie, and she loses consciousness and falls onto the bed. Then Andrew comes into the room and starts saying that Millie has to follow all the rules, and Millie agrees. She tricks him with her words. Suddenly, Millie grabs a knife and stabs Andrew in the neck, and then she runs and locks Andrew inside the room. Yes, friends, Millie found this knife in the room. Nina had left it there for her, because Nina was expecting that Millie would definitely attack Andrew. Now Millie not only locks Andrew inside, but also does the same thing to him. That is, Millie tells Andrew that he will have to do certain things, and only then will he be freed. And for starters, Millie gives Andrew a pair of pliers under the door of the room. With these, Andrew has to pull out his front tooth. The tooth is important because it's with this charming smile that Andrew seduces girls. Anyway, Millie was chilling at home while Andrew was locked in the attic. You know what he had to do there. To torture Andrew, Millie starts breaking his favorite china plates right in front of him, outside the door. On the other hand, Nina and Cece are at a restaurant where Cece says that even though Nina is safe, she wonders how Millie is managing to live in that house. Nina initially thinks of ignoring Millie and running away from the place, but then Nina also gets scared that Andrew might hurt Millie even more. So Nina immediately takes her car and returns home to save Millie. Meanwhile, Millie was so ruthless that she makes Andrew pull out his own tooth. Then she doesn't even set him free. Andrew was suffering in the room, but then Nina arrives. Nina quietly enters the house and thinks that Millie is locked in the room. So she opens the room door, freeing Andrew. Just then, Millie also arrives, and Andrew moves to attack Millie. Millie runs out of the house, and Andrew can't find her. Andrew returns home injured and starts apologizing to Nina, saying that they should get back together. Nina says that she would rather die than be with a worthless person like Andrew. Hearing this, Andrew attacks Nina and reaches the edge of the stairs. Just then, Millie comes from behind and pushes Andrew down, killing him. Now, if you remember, this was predicted at the beginning of the film when Nina said that she or someone else could fall down these stairs and die, and I even told you to remember that. And, as it turns out, Andrew did indeed die after falling down those stairs. At this moment, Millie and Nina look at each other, but they didn't have any problem with each other because both were victims. Millie places Andrew's extracted teeth near his body, and Nina tells Millie to run away. Why? Because the investigation would clearly reveal that Andrew was murdered, and then the police would catch Millie. She's already on parole, so yes, Millie shouldn't ruin her life. She should run away. And as far as Nina is concerned, even if she gets caught, she'll only be sent to a mental ward for a few months or a few years, after which Nina will be free anyway. So, after this, Nina calls the police and fabricates a story that Millie was on vacation and was out of town. When Nina returned, Andrew was lying dead after falling down the stairs because he was changing the light bulb above the stairs. Nina even dropped the light bulb to make the evidence match her story. Now, the detective who arrived clearly understood that this was a murder case because there were knife marks on Andrew's neck. A fall wouldn't cause teeth to be knocked out like that. But this lady detective was also connected to Andrew. How? Well, if you remember, Andrew had a fiancée with whom he couldn't get married. That girl was this lady detective's sister named Kathleen, and after being with Andrew, Kathleen became mentally disturbed forever. The detective knew that Andrew had wronged her sister Kathleen, but she couldn't do anything against Andrew's power and money. But now that Andrew is dead, the detective states in the case report that Andrew actually died from an accidental fall and that no one killed him. So yes, the detective also got revenge for her sister, and as for Millie and Nina, both of them survived. The next scene is Andrew's funeral, where we meet Andrew's mother. She says strange things, like Andrew's teeth are missing, that having teeth is a privilege. His smile was beautiful, but he couldn't save his teeth. All these strange things. Hearing this, we understand that Cece also used to say similar things, which she must have learned from Andrew and his mother. Now Millie also came to the funeral, and Nina gives Millie a $1,000 check so that Millie can start a new life. Technically, Andrew and Nina's divorce hadn't been finalized yet. So all of Andrew's money belonged to her, and Andrew himself had inherited everything, the house, the money, and the IT company, from his father. He hadn't earned anything himself. Now, Nina recommends Millie to one of her friends, and Millie goes to interview for an in-house maid position. The friend says that she's meeting Millie only because Nina recommended her, and during the conversation, Millie notices that the lady has bruises on her hands. This means that the lady's husband physically abuses her, and that's why Nina sent Millie there. Millie just smiles and asks when she can start working. The film ends here.